Malawi courts appeared to have abolished the death sentence in April last year. That came after a Supreme Court judge heard the petition of a convicted murderer and ruled that the death penalty negates the right to life, which is otherwise provided for under Malawi's constitution. The judge then ordered the resentencing of all cases where the death penalty was handed down. However, 4 months later, the Supreme Court issued a statement saying the judge had expressed his personal opinion and the death penalty remained applicable. There have been growing calls both locally and internationally for Malawi to abolish the death penalty, especially because the country is a signatory to the Declaration of Universal Human Rights, in which the punishment is not allowed. Tuesday's public hearing is the first of 3 such sessions, with similar events planned for the northern city of Mzuzu and the southern city of Blantyre later this month. Malawi currently has 25 people sentenced to death and awaiting execution, but none have been carried out since 1994.
Right, Malawi human rights lawyer Alexious Kamangira is in Lilongwe. He joins us now to speak about these developments. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's just first start with how Malawi's parliament will carry out the public inquiries.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm Alexious Kamangira, and the parliament process will be that under the constitution, they have the powers to legislate, to make laws, and within that, the constitution under section 8 does indicate that it should be in the interest of the people and should reflect the values of the people. And so the process that Parliament is doing now, it's mandated to do that under section 60 of the constitution and under their standing orders. And so what is going on is that it has invited different stakeholders, having in mind that death penalty is an issue that has been discussed for ages in Malawi. And normally it has got different views. And so it's intending to collect views, to solicit views from different stakeholders in Malawi. Beginning on yesterday in Lilongwe Parliament building, we saw Parliament collecting views from different stakeholders, including traditional leaders, religious leaders, and all people of all walks of life. And so from there, we are heading on Friday to Mzuzu. Thereafter, there will be another public hearing in Blantyre.
I believe this is on the back of a report. Just kindly share with us what that report said, the findings thereof that led us to this point.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's a very good question because this report basically was recommending abolition of the death penalty, but it indicated that maybe as a form of recommendation, it wanted to solicit views of the people. And so Parliament gave it the mandate, the whole Parliament, to go and solicit the views of the people so that the decision of Parliament should be informed by the people. But what was interesting was that during that submission of the report to Parliament, the Minister of Justice, Honorable Titus Nvalo, spoke on how death penalty is a savagery punishment and as well as being archaic, and that there's need for Malawi to move forward. But also we had the leader of the House, Honorable Chimwendo Banda, who spoke highly on the need to get rid of the death penalty. So we can see that there is political leadership, and I think that's what has been lacking for so many years in Malawi in terms of being decisive, because as you put it, it's now the 30th year, 3 decades since death penalty was utilized, or was a death sentence was executed in Malawi. So 30 years of de facto moratorium on the death penalty, I think it's a good sign enough for us to move forward into abolishing the death penalty.
And before we get to public opinion, once again, Alexious, I want to talk about, this has not occurred in a vacuum. There was a Supreme Court ruling last year on a death penalty ban. If you could just give us a bit of background to why a judge had made the decision that he had, and how he also made pronouncements about other similar findings with regards to the death penalty. penalty?
Yeah, thank you so much. So, as you know, the death penalty originally was mandatory death sentence, which meant that once the court has found you guilty of having killed someone, then there was no discussion on the circumstances or your background as a human being. It was automatically a death sentence. In 2007, there was a decision, the Kafantine decision, which found the mandatory death penalty unconstitutional. But then by this time, other people had already been sentenced under the mandatory death sentence. When the decision of Kafantine was coming, there had been other inmates, including Charles Koviwa, who had already been sentenced under mandatory death sentence, but had already applied to the Supreme Court for their hearings. And so this happened that the system left a number of people, to my counting, 10 of them, who had been sentenced under mandatory death sentence, but had not benefited from the resentencing of all inmates following the Kafantine decision. And so Charles Koviwa in 2003, having been sentenced to death under mandatory death penalty, was entitled to a resentencing. And this is what came before the court in 2018, I think earlier, after he had been denied for a resentencing, which the High Court denied, and it went over to the Supreme Court. And it was indeed on 28th April 2021 when the Supreme Court of Malawi, with the majority decision, declared the death penalty unconstitutional and found that all the people that had been sentenced to death should be resentenced, and that anywhere in our statutes where it's written death sentence, it should read life imprisonment. But then, in a twist of things, on 4 months later, in August, the High Court the Supreme Court retained to say the decision of that was earlier on presented as a majority decision was rather a minority decision. And the reason was basically not on point of law, it was on technicality. The Supreme Court was of the view that the issue of the death penalty was not before the court. But Justice Mwangulu, Justice of Appeal Mwangulu, Senior Counsel, now retired, he was of the view that you cannot question mandatory death penalty without discussing the death penalty. So he had found that the death penalty was before the court. So despite really this hiccup, but we have a minority Supreme Court judgment that declares the death penalty unconstitutional. So it's a positive move, it's a stride, it's still something that we are proud of in Malawi.
So Justice Mwangulu's opinion was based, as he said, on the right to life as per the Constitution. So what are Malawians going to receive? Is it going to be a questionnaire survey that will ask them questions about the right to life or the Constitution, and how will it be framed? Because this too is very important if you have to consider this.
No, I mean, when it comes to a right, first of all, it should be clear that you can't put the right on a vote. Clearly, the conversation is not whether we should protect the right to life or not. It's guaranteed. There's no discussion. We need to protect the right to life. The question that Malawi is grappling with regard to engaging the public is as to whether it is time to move to abolish the death penalty. And I think my thoughts are that the consultation is a process which is done to ensure that everyone's view is heard. But at the end of the day, Parliament has got the obligation to follow the law and to ensure that it takes Malawi to the right direction. And that's why they represent the people. They were given that authority for the purpose of guiding people in the right direction. So even in the instances, for argument's sake, that the majority, and this is might be considered as not present, but the reality is that in the context that maybe majority pro death penalty, it would be strange for the Parliament to move in that direction, because not all times in history are the majority right. If the majority today vote back for slave trade, it doesn't mean that then we have to go back to slavery or slave trade. Thank you.
All right. So just finally, what happens next? Just give us a sense of the consultations, the process that follows thereafter.
Thank you so much. I think it is clear that after the consultations, the Legal Affairs Committee, which is being led by Honorable Peter Dimba, was being extremely very helpful in terms of doing the whole process. They are going to write a report of their findings, submitting to Parliament, but importantly, they will submit to the Minister of Justice. And this submission, especially to the Minister of Justice, will make a recommendation in terms of what should be done on the death penalty. And we believe, as human rights activists, organizations, and all those people that have been following this issue, that there will be a recommendation that the Minister of Justice should propose an amendment of the penal code so that death sentence is no longer a punishment permissible under the law in Malawi.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us, Alexious Kamangira. He's a human rights lawyer, speaking to us from Lilongwe in Malawi.